So I've been talking about John and this sort of connection to Paula Woodward and this JonBenet Ramsey case, and just kind of wondering, um, digging a little bit deeper, wondering about this interesting connection that they have. And like I said, I'm not a big ransom note guy, but I am looking at patterns that could exist between um, what John is saying. You know what I mean? Between what John is saying and what the ransom note says, how it's structured. Because a person cannot change their fingerprint when they try to do things. They can't. It's extremely hard because you do things the way that you do things. You see things the way that you see things automatically. It's natural. So it happens that way. You know, you have to try really hard not to do it. You know what I mean? Um, and there is a bit of concern. And I feel like we've been talking about this whole DNA thing with the DNA evidence and what the DNA can do, especially centering around Paula Woodward. She's trying to be, you know, now that I think about it, Paula Woodward is to John Ramsey as Susan Stein was to Patsy Ramsey. You ever notice that? Probably not. Maybe you did. You know, I don't want to underestimate your intelligence. You probably did. You probably did make that connection. But I was like, you know, Paula Woodward is in John Ramsey's back pocket. Like she defends him. She defends him more than his wife. You know, you don't see his wife is like, I'm staying out of it. I don't want anything to do with it. We can have a memorial of JonBenet, but you know, she's kind of really non-existent. And Paula Woodward is on those calls with John as he's, you know, talking to people about changing laws and stuff like that. And she's documenting, taking notes and stuff like that. And John is just like part of John's little entourage, you know. But what I was thinking about in terms of the note, and we talked a little bit about it, but in this specific instance, I'm not really asking if John is guilty. I'm asking essentially something a little bit more structural. And my question, we go back to why do both the ransom note and John's speech show a pattern of starting in one direction and then pivoting? Um, this is important because a lot of people, some people, you know, a good amount of people think that John dictated the note. And we come close to a fingerprint because if you remember, if you remember Patsy's fingerprints in terms of like her personal fingerprints seemed to be on the ransom note in terms of her writing style, right? But in terms of pattern dictation, right? John is starting to come under fire. John has always come under fire as the person dictating the note and Patsy writing the note. And we kind of see the hesitancy and the pivoting coming out a little bit more. And so the speech starts in one direction and then starts pivoting, as if the center of gravity keeps shifting mid-sentence is what's happening, right? It's like you start and it's like you start and you say, you know what, I you know, a burger would really sound good right now. You know, I don't know what I want. A burger would really sound good right now. And you're locked in as a person who's listening. You know what? Okay, let me set the example even better. Say you're a cashier or say you're a waiter. More options. Say you're a waiter at a high-end restaurant or just wherever. You know, it doesn't matter, a local diner. You're a waiter there, and you know, you're there taking orders and stuff. And person comes in and they're like, man, you know what? I'm in the mood for something hot. And so you start recommending all the hot things on the menu, and you're like, well, you know, something to drink or something to eat. Oh, something to eat. You know, I can get lemonade, because that's cool, but something to eat. It's like, well, we got a hot burger, we got, a hot sandwich, we got this, that, we got a grilled cheese, we got a BLT, we have all these things. And he's like, you know what? I'm in the mood for a BLT. And say, okay, cool. What would you like on your BLT? And then he switches up and he says, a salad would be nice. And you're like, I don't think we have any hot salads. And he's like, yeah, man, a steak would just be, ooh. And it's like, so we're traveling. We've gone from sort of like this fast burger to sort of like this healthier salad idea to now like this very meaty steak idea, higher end eating in the matter of seconds or minutes. And you're confused because it's like, okay, I can see a relationship between the burger and the steak because they're both kind of hot. You don't want your burger to be warm, like cold. You know what I mean? You want the burger to be hot, and the salad probably won't be, but you've gone from hot to cold to hot. And then you take me way away and you say breakfast food. Oh man, that sounds good. But not just any breakfast food, Pop-Tarts. Pop-Tarts? Where are you right now? And I think that's what the ransom note does. And that's also what John Ramsey's language does. And so it's like, if you're trying to get a pattern down of how somebody's thinking and maneuvering and acting throughout the world, just pay attention to how they write and how they speak. So anyways, asking something a little bit more structural and wondering why the center of gravity keeps changing. And so this becomes more of a rhetorical question and less of a psychological question, I might say. And so staying on the structural side, and we're not accusing John here. We're just kind of just looking, So the first point is starting with this idea of please leave. That really didn't sit well with me. When he said, please leave, my thing, because she's asking him, Paula Woodward was asking him, if the intruder could hear you right now, what would you say? And John said, please leave. Where? He's gone. Where would he be going? Why would you? It's almost as if where could you go from that sentence? I'm sorry, I need to stay on my notes. But where can you go from that sentence? When you say, please leave, right? That's either one of two things. Leave me alone, leave my family alone, maybe three, or leave this city, or leave my house. Please leave. There's four things, I guess. Kind of the same thing. Please leave. One of those. Where would they go? Leave the country? It's 5. What? Leave my mind? 6. It's strange that he says, please. The first thing that, when she said, what would you tell him? The first thing that came to his mind was, please leave. Please leave her here with us. 7. Please leave your number. Leave her by the doorstep. She's already here. You already have her. You've already buried her. Please leave what? I wonder, is this a question that you've thought about? And I'm pretty sure you have. Is this a question that you've thought about? And because this question is not very deep, you've answered, I feel like, 1,000,000 times, but please leave is an odd response to what you would say to the criminal, because we are beyond getting JonBenet back at this point. So there's very limited things that you can ask this guy. Please leave your number so we can, you can't give him ransom money. That would be before JonBenet died, please leave your email. That'd be before JonBenet died. Please leave. I don't know. I'm a little lost and confused that you would start with please leave. Why is that the first? And I say that what's getting me is that I'm thinking of Patsy when I'm talking. I'm thinking about these mental slip ups because I'm thinking about when Patsy um, talked about her dreams and what she dreamed sometimes. Um, you know, she mentioned I think one dream and one flashback. JonBenet is going down a corridor and she can't catch her. That can just just that dream alone can signal JonBenet is slipping away. It's a element of JonBenet of sort of showcasing that JonBenet is in a place in your life to where you're running to try to catch her, but you just can't, and she's slipping away. Um, is probably the element there. But also too, Patsy's flashback of hearing screams in the night. I wonder, and we know John is a force, a force field of himself. He protects his emotions at all times. But in relation to what a criminal is doing to you mentally, you say, please leave. I'm not sure if John had any dreams himself or what have you. Oh, he did have a dream. He dreamed that, he was like in a field or something like that. And he had picked up JonBenet and they were kind of like, he was spinning her and or whatever, holding her or something like that. And then all of a sudden she was gone. And that's tough, because essentially he and Patsy had the same kind of dream of, sweet memories. Well, no, not sweet memories, but the same thing is that she's with me, she's close one day, and then the next minute she's gone. I think John's was a little bit more decorated and reminiscent and reminiscent and seeing the beauty of life, whereas um, Patsy's was more doom and gloom, and it showcases their personalities really well. How Patsy sees things. Patsy sees things more in a detrimental sense. Things can go bad very terribly. She's gone through cancer twice. Well, once at this point, and so she's lost her daughter now at this point. So it's a lot of doom and gloom that she might be prone to, even though Patsy is, she's spontaneous. She seems extroverted, and she seems upbeat. That kind of person can be prone to different bouts of depression and maybe not feeling worthy enough at times, and to her kids and to her husband and to her family. Maybe she feels like there's different parts in her life to where she's failing, and so that comes through in her language, in her thinking about herself, and in her dreams. But John more so is confident. He doesn't really have self-esteem issues. I know he talks about battling with wanting to exit, but and that could be true in a moment of intense emotional pain. Of course, after losing your daughter and then losing another daughter, and losing your mother and then losing your dad. Oh man, talk about bad luck. So it's just tough all around for John, but John is sort of an overcomer. He perseveres no matter what. And that's indicative of what you see in John and Patsy's marriage. John is still here. John is still kicking. John is still rocking. But Patsy had to lay down, what, 20 years ago. Ooh. Patsy had to lay down 20 years ago now. Almost. Probably 19 years. Probably we're 3 months. Where are we in March, April, May, June? She died in June? Uh, yeah, so we're in the very beginning of March. We go all the way through March, April, May. 4 months away from Patsy's 20-year anniversary of passing away. So Patsy had to go down. She had a lot of things holding her down and stopping her, but John was persevering, not always of his own volition, but just that's who he is. And so, and he's never had any cancer or sickness to deal with. I acknowledge that that I know of. And so John is a little bit more perseverant in that sense. And his dream would reflect a little bit more of an upbeat tempo. So mentally, John is a little bit more upbeat than Patsy. Patsy externally is upbeat, but mentally she is downtrodden at times. And externally, John is downtrodden, but mentally he's upbeat. And so it's kind of an inverse dynamic there. They're the sort of like the inverse of one another. And so, but anyways, it shows through in their dreams. And there was another dream that Patsy had that I cannot remember her having. But anyways, please leave. It seems like almost like a Freudian slip to me. And that's why I kind of go around in that circle to kind of land back here. Please leave almost seems like a little slip. Because we see the slip in the mind of Patsy, not only through the dream, but more so, and even better through her flashback. We see a slip in that possibly Patsy heard something. Possibly Patsy heard a scream. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she didn't. She was somewhere else. Maybe she thinks she didn't hear anything when she did. Maybe she heard the same thing that Melody Stanton heard, and she just doesn't want to believe that she heard it because she doesn't, as a mother, she doesn't want to believe that she heard her daughter's last scream and didn't do anything about it. And so she pushes that in her mind, but her mind pushes right back. She pushes that back into the recesses in the subconscious of her mind, but her mind pushes right back and says, absolutely not. This is coming out. This is what's there. And she's tormented by that internally. And Patsy was tormented by that for a long time, I think. But the Freudian slip comes for John, I think, here when he says, please leave. Who would you be referring that to? Who would you have? Please leave is sort of polite, but commanding. It's telling you, it's polite, but it's firm. Please leave. And it's almost at times, depending on how you say it, it's almost at times a way of sort of saying, I don't want you here anymore. I'm done with you. You're done. Some of you have said on the phone call that you heard somebody say, we're not speaking with you. That tone is, if that was said on the call, that tone is similar. Please leave and we're not talking to you. Both of those phrases are very similar in how they're dismissive to the person. They sort of reflect an intention to take authority over the person in a way without being assertive and without being forceful. And they say, we're not speaking to you. And so the person who receives, we're not speaking to you, is like, dang, well, I guess you got two options. I can stay here. Well, yeah, you got several options. I could stay here and I could just stand here and be like, well, dang, I mean, I guess I'll just stand here and be quiet. They can be like, well, dang, I guess I'll leave, and they can get up and leave, or they can push back and say, well, I'm talking to you. But you have to be comfortable. This is sort of like, please leave. You're talking to a criminal, right? And obviously that doesn't mean that you won't use language like please. I don't know that. I think that language would be more reserved for when you're wanting to get JonBenet back. Please return my daughter would be then. But please leave after 3 years after JonBenet has passed. 4 years after JonBenet has passed, 3 or 4 years after JonBenet has passed, you're no longer in the stage of please, because it almost seems like you're please leave is like I'm still trying to get her back. Or please leave is like somebody's in my presence still and I want them to go. Who would be in your, and that's where the Freudian slip is. Who would be in John Ramsey's presence that he would want to leave? That would be top of mind, right? It's like, and you can acknowledge that it's possible that John is thinking, when the question comes at him, his mind just wanders off somewhere else. But that also tells you something. Where is your mind wandering off that the first thing that you say, what were you thinking of? And you got to ask people this sometimes when they respond in certain ways that are just kind of like, what are we even talking about? What were you thinking about just now that you would respond? And they might respond with, oh, I'm sorry. I haven't eaten in 3 hours. I'm hungry. I'm tired. And you called me at the wrong time. You caught me when I was thinking about eating a nice juicy steak. That's what I was thinking about. And so whether we caught John sort of drifting off into la la land, thinking about something else, the please leave when it comes to this criminal is kind of concerning. And I'm stuck on it because, again, it shows some sort of force. It shows some sort of control that you have, because John always talks about having control, being the hero. I knew I could save my daughter. I had to be strong and I had to fight. I couldn't save Beth like I wanted to, but I could save JonBenet. There was a chance. When honestly, it's like what made him think that he could save JonBenet is kind of throwing me for a loop. JonBenet, when you read the letter, JonBenet is you don't know where JonBenet is according to you. In what you tell us. And so you feel like, and that's another element of brute force that we've talked about in other analysis, this brute force of John Ramsey, when he sort of just is all over the crime scene. When he's walking around, he throws the sheet over JonBenet's face. When Linda Arnn is examining, he brings JonBenet up the stairs. He is trying to sort of clean up the glass around the crime scene. Downstairs and stuff like that. He's walking around the house looking out of the window and all such as that, sort of like this brute force approach. And so he's kind of saying, please leave, as if he has some sort of force that he can give to the situation, that whoever he's talking to must do what he says. And please leave almost sounds like, I beg of you, get out of my life. I beg of you. I just want you to go. And it means that you're talking to somebody specific. You're talking to somebody very directly. I probably can ask you and you won't tell me, but you have somebody specific in mind. You have somebody specific in mind that you're talking about. And you can hide that from us, but you don't just start off and say, please leave, and then quickly pivot away and it mean nothing. You don't just start up and say, please leave really quickly, and then just pivot away and say, oh, I didn't mean that, actually. That's concern for me, because the ransom note started off as Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, and then it just pivoted into a completely different direction. And now, when we wonder, who can we find that has done this? Whose mind works like this? The mind of John Ramsey could be a candidate. The mind of John Ramsey could be very similar when we think about the pattern of stop and pivot. Because John goes on to say, "Oh, we've been looking at you. We've been looking for you for years, something like that. And we wanna be able to find you and turn yourself in somewhere. We beg of you, kind of stuff." And then it's like, as Paula is talking to him, he really doesn't have. He's not really giving any thought to this person turning themselves in. You know, we mentioned how John, on another analysis, we mentioned how John, um, we mentioned how John is not as far removed from crime investigation as he makes it seem. Looking up the Guthrie case, looking up other cases, and looking up the Idaho murders that he's mentioned, he's been specific about, and saying, the size was the city was a very small city. Huh. So I'm looking to see what the police did there. And he looks at it not in a way, because JonBenet is gone. You don't need to be seeing what the police are doing there and how they handle it, because how Boulder police handled it is how they handled it. And if you say bring in the FBI, well, the files are over in the hands of the FBI right now. So we're kind of on par there. But you say, I'm looking at how this small town handled it. Sometimes they say a criminal returns to the scene of a crime. I was watching this murder crime scene investigation documentary, and they were saying that there was this one guy who, out of nowhere, he's calling about the case at random, and he's asking really random weird stuff. And the police were like, what? And it's like, it just seems like the questions that you're asking are weird. Seems like you're just trying to check in and fish for information and understand what kind of information we have. Right? Somebody like that stays abreast of, the current trends in the country and crime scene investigations, and they stay abreast of the case. And they're really kind of clueless, they're really kind of clueless to everything else that's going on. They're clueless to everything that the police have, but I guess that's why they're shopping. And they kind of out themselves by calling and asking, what do you guys have? Where are you guys at? What have you guys found? And they're not really deeply embedded into the case. But it seems like police say, you're just kind of fishing. And I know John says he calls the police and they don't pick up his call or whatever, but he just calls to kind of ask every now and again where they are with the case and what they're up to, what they're doing. But every time you talk to John, he really has no update or any proof that he has tried to work in a meaningful way with the police. John calls and asks them where you are on this case. He doesn't ask, how can we help? The only thing that he tries to talk about is DNA. And he's asking about things that the Boulder police have turned down many times, have told him is not their focus many times. And he keeps asking about the same thing that they have turned down many times. And he is not offered to help in any other way except this one, which kind of concerns me, because it's like, John, that if we use this DNA, this is all we have, and the DNA is ruined, right? You're doing some stuff that concerns me. am just saying. I feel like I've seen this pattern other places, is all I'm saying. Can't really put my finger on it. But I feel like I've seen this pattern other places. And when you say, please leave, it doesn't sound like you're asking a question or you're talking to somebody random. It sounds like you know exactly who you're talking to. That's all I'm saying. Let me know what you think. Like, share, and subscribe. Talk to me in the comments. Hype the video up. Appreciate you. Much love to you. I'm puzzled. Take care of yourself. Till the next time, take it easy.